So welcome everybody. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So today we're going to be looking at a summary of career Dharma, the 9 principles to identify and live our ideal career. And this is a summary of the book that I wrote with Dr. Ruchira Datta, aka Urmila Devi Dasi. That's not my god sister Rukmini. And what we're going to be looking at, again, this is a fairly quick run through. We're going to be looking at learning and teaching how to identify our nature and use it in Krishna's service. So if you'd like to be on our mailing list, you can capture this QR code and sign up for our mailing list. We also have on careerdharma.net a full course, a full online course on Career Dharma, which goes into much more depth than I'm going to be going into today. We also have information there as to how you can get the book in print, audio, and ebook. So that's all at careerdharma.net. You can also find there a list of certified career Dharma coaches. So if you would like more individual help with understanding your own nature, how to spiritualize your work, how to understand the whole system, the whole socioeconomic system, you can find all that on careerdharma.net. So I'd like you to imagine that your daily life has come to include all the practices and activities that you've always dreamed of, that you love the work you're doing, what you're producing, and how you're making a meaningful contribution. That your work is bringing you the kinds of prosperity that truly enrich you and that you joyfully share with others. Now imagine that the whole world was living like that. So such is the vision of the wisdom literature, the scriptures such as the Bhagavad Gita and the Bhagavad Purana. That's the socioeconomic situation and picture that they envision. So we're going to look at 4 main areas: identifying our ideal career field and prosperity type, learning the secrets of making our work deeply meaningful, then progressing to dharmic mastery, and the whole system for peace and prosperity. Now, I also teach these as individual classes. So again, today we're going to be going through things rather quickly. So these 4 areas encompass 9 principles of career Dharma, connecting our nature with our livelihood, which means that the way that we maintain ourselves should correspond to what Srila Prabhupada calls our psychophysical nature. Advancing through life while nourishing our nature, which talks about the fact that our Dharma needs to be recognized and trained. There's initial inclination for Dharma, and then there's expertise in Dharma, and that we also have different stages of life we go through while exhibiting our Dharma. Then our third one is extending our prosperity to others. This is the idea of giving, being selfless, giving in charity, ethical and meaningful work of value, that our work also has to be honest and ethical and contribute something of value, that we should cherish our prosperity and field of work, a very important point in scriptures like the Gita and the Bhagavatam, but one I think that's not so well understood. Then having celebrations of the sacred in our life and work. I think most spiritual practitioners are very familiar with this one. This is the principle of yajna and sadhana, being above the shades of ego or the modes of nature. Those are the 7 individual principles, and then the 2 that rely on, that deal with society in general, are maintaining societal balance, cooperation between the fields, and competition only within the fields. And then one that I think we give the most emphasis to in our devotee community, all-inclusive sustainable prosperity. And what's really cool is when you put these principles together, they spell career Dharma. So at least in English, when we try to translate it, it doesn't work. But we have this nice mnemonic. So let's look at the first area, identifying our prosperity type and career field. This is usually the area that most people are primarily interested in. And looking at principle 1, connecting our nature with our livelihood. So I'd like to ask all of you to think about if you have ever read about anyone, met anyone, heard about anyone who doesn't have a lot of money, but has a very happy, rich life. If you say to them, "Do you have a rich life?" They would say, "Yes, my life is rich. I feel like I'm a prosperous person." And then one of the beginnings of my journeys with this was that I remember meeting one devotee who said, "My wife and I have friends all over the world, and therefore we are very rich." So there are many, many people who don't have a lot of money and yet are very rich in their life. And then perhaps we have read about, heard about, met, or know someone who has a lot of money but a poor, empty life. And I always say, if you don't know of anybody offhand, just turn to any news headline in any newspaper any day, and you will read about somebody who is swimming in money but is unhappy and has an impoverished life. So the Vedas teach us that there's 6 ways of being rich. And I do have a full 2-hour class I give just on this topic. So again, we're going to be going through this very quickly. But I'd like you to really think about this as we go through it. Most of us have here at least 2, sometimes 3 of these that are really going to be important to us in our work, in our career, in order for us to feel that we are prosperous. So we'll look first at Aishvarya. Aishvarya comes from the Sanskrit word Ishwara, which means controller. So Aishwarya would refer in work to if you have some positional authority. You have some title. You're a president, you're a vice president, you're a CEO, you're a project manager, you're a foreman. You have some situation where you have positional authority over other people, and you also have some control, usually over money and maybe luxury items, so items that are worth money or money itself, over people, and that you have controlling power in your work. And of course, we need such people. We need leaders. We need positional leaders. This is talking about positional, titled leadership. And many of us really thrive when we have Aishvarya in our work. We really thrive when we have the ability to lead projects and organize them, to put people in the right place, to spend money wisely and appropriately. And other people absolutely hate having this in their work. They're like, no way do I want this responsibility. I want other people to be in charge, or I just want to work on a team, or I just want to work on my own. I have a good friend who was working as a teacher's assistant, and then she was put in a position of leadership, and she started getting stomach aches and sleep problems. And then there's other people who naturally thrive in these positions that if they don't have any Aishvarya, they'll start managing and leading things that aren't really even theirs to manage and lead and causing a problem. And then there are people somewhere in the middle. They're kind of ambivalent about it. So I'd like you to take a couple moments and think about when you've had Aishvarya in your work or in your service, in something that you've done pretty much full time, and when you haven't had it. And how do you feel, or what happens in your life? How do you respond when you have it? And how do you feel? How do you respond? What happens to you when you don't have it? So I'd like you to take a couple moments and think about this. The next one we're going to look at is Gyan. Gyan means knowledge and wisdom. So a lot of us really want work that involves Gyan. So this would be work where continuing to learn, to do research, to do study is required in your work. It's an integral part of your work. Like I spoke to a medical doctor who said that she had to read at least 3 articles in medical journals a week to keep current in her specialty. So we have work that requires learning. It requires study. It requires research. It's like in your job, you keep going to school. You never quite get out of school in your work. And there are people who love this. They're like, I want to keep learning and researching and studying as part of my work. And other people really don't. They're like, I want to learn what I need to learn to do my job, and then that's it. You know, whatever I want to study or read about, let me do it for recreation as a hobby, but as part of my work, I don't want to be forced to keep learning. And then there are people who are kind of ambivalent. They're somewhere in the middle. Yeah, it can be part of my work or not. It doesn't really matter. So again, I'd like you to take a few moments. Think about when Gyan was an integral part of your work and when it wasn't. And how did you feel? What happened to you in your life? What did you do when you had Gyan as part of your work? And how did you feel? What happened to you when you didn't have it? The next one we want to look at is virya, which means strength and health. Of course, all of us would like to be healthy, but here we're looking at virya as part of our work. So if strength and health is part of your work, generally such would mean that your work involves some element of physicality. You're lifting things, you're doing a lot of walking, uh, something where you are gaining in health and strength through your work. Now, we can look at work in terms of which prosperity types we give to others, and in our book we do that. Right now, we're looking at what our work gives for ourselves. So this is really to what extent does your work make you healthy? For example, a dentist is contributing to other people's health, but doing dentistry doesn't help the health of the dentist. There are some jobs that do both. Like I have a friend who runs an Ayurvedic restaurant, and so she's always eating healthy food herself, testing the recipes and so forth. So there's some of us who really want this as part of our work. We want to do work that's physical, or we want to do work that's really contributing to our health. And other people are like, hey, I want to do that after work. I met one man who wanted to run a chain of gyms, but he said that he wanted his own workouts to be his recreation, not his work. He said, hey, when I'm working out, I just want to listen to a podcast or a class and shut out the world. I don't want it as an integral part of my work. And then other people are a little ambivalent about it. So I'd like you to think of when you had virya as part of your work, when you haven't had it. How did you feel? What happened to you? What did you do when you had it? And how did you feel? What happened to you when you didn't have it? Let me go on to Shri. Shri is so multifaceted. It literally means like sparkling brilliance. And Shri also, I mean, you could say that it's beauty, but it's really beyond that. We can think of Shri as beauty for the eyes, visual beauty, beauty for the ears, auditory beauty, beauty for the nose, olfactory beauty, perhaps for the tongue, gustatory beauty, the beauty of nature. It also refers to like being sparkling and having charismatic leadership, which is different from Aishwarya. So, charismatic leadership, you may not have any position. You may be influencing a lot of people. And we need somebody to mute there. You may have an ability to influence people and inspire people, but you don't have a title. You're not necessarily managing people or money or expensive items, but rather you're in some position of charismatic or influential leadership. So Shri can involve any of those. Like let's say I know one lady who runs a shop that involves a lot of these things. So she sells beautiful items, she sells artwork and jewelry. She also has wonderful music playing, and she sells music to people. And then she also has incense and oils and perfumes. So she sells that to people. The whole shop is beautiful. It kind of looks like a museum. So she also the shop is located in an area that's very beautiful in terms of nature as well. And there's an adjoining shop that sells plants. So I don't think she has much charismatic leadership. She has all the other elements. I also know of somebody who manages and influences many, many tens of thousands of people, but not in a direct managerial sense, more in a charismatic leadership sense. and deals a lot again with perfumes and oils and art and things of that nature. So there are some of us for whom we really want to have Shri as part of our work. I think of my daughter who runs a classical Indian dance school. So she has a lot of virya as part of her work because it's quite a workout to do the dance, and a lot of Shri, the beauty of the costumes, the beauty of the music, and so forth. So I'd like you to think of when you had Shri as part of your work or service, and when you didn't have it, any of these aspects of Shri. And how did you feel when you had it and when you didn't have it? I mean, people who don't want Shri as part of their work, they find these aspects annoying. They're like, just let me focus on the practical, let someone else take care of that, and other people are ambivalent. So again, think about any aspect of Shri as part of your work. When you've had it, when you haven't had it, how did you feel or what happened to you when you had it? How did you feel or what happened to you when you didn't have it? Now we're going to go into yasha. Yasha means fame, but it's a particular type of fame. There's a personality in the Bhagavatam called Yasha, who is the child of Kirti and Dharma. So Kirti means to talk about. Dharma means what is authentic, what is good, what is righteous, what is meritorious. So if one has Yasha, it means that people talk about you favorably because of something righteous that you've done. So there's something authentic about it. This is not the kind of fame that you're standing on the stage and thousands of people are cheering and you're influencing them. That's Shri. But this yasha is more that your work involves an ongoing group of people. It could be colleagues, a team of colleagues at work, or it could be an ongoing community that you serve that's very acknowledging and appreciative. So it's not just task focused. I mean, you could work with a team where everyone's just focused on the job and they hardly even say good morning. Or it could be that you're working with a team or with, as I say, an ongoing community that's very supportive of each other. So there's a lot of us for whom having yasha is really important to feel prosperous in our work. I have met people who literally will only be productive when they're part of an encouraging team. And then others of us who really don't want yasha as part of our work, we want our supportive community outside of work, hang out with our family or friends out of work, and on work we want to be very task focused. And then there are people who are somewhat ambivalent. I'd like you to think about when yasha has been part of your work and when it hasn't. How do you feel? Or what happens to you when you have it? How do you feel or what happens to you when you don't have it? Last we're going to look at is vairagya. Vairagya is an interesting kind of prosperity. People might think of it as an anti-prosperity. So vairagya means without attachment. And in work, it would relate to having a lot of freedom and equanimity. Maybe you can have a flexible schedule. Maybe your work involves a lot of travel. Maybe your work allows you to bicycle to work and have a minimalist lifestyle. Maybe, like, I won't know one gentleman who worked as a manager in a high security prison for some of the most notorious criminals, like Charles Manson. So maybe it involves a real sense of detachment. You know, you've got to take care of these super evil people. So it could be that kind of vairagya. Some of us really like this in our work. Some of us find that we need vairagya to thrive. Other people really don't want vairagya in their work. They like having a set schedule. They like having, a very comfortable life. They don't want a lot of travel as part of their work. And they want to be very socially, emotionally involved with people in their work. And then there are people who are somewhere in the middle. So I'd like you to think of when you have had vairagya as part of your work, when you haven't, what has happened to you, and how do you feel when you have vairagya in your work? What happens to you, and how do you feel when you don't have it? So perhaps when the class is over, we don't really have time now, but I would suggest that each of you make a list of these prosperity types in order of what's important to you in your work, keeping in mind that some of these you might want outside of work in recreation. In the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna distinguishes between work and recreation, and see what's most important to you in your work. In our book, in Appendix B, we have some exercises you can do to help understand this. And in Appendix A, we have some ways that you can analyze other people's work to understand what prosperity types they're enjoying, which should also help you to understand this more deeply. So, in addition to understanding our nature through the lens of our prosperity types, we can also look at something with which I think many of you are very familiar. In Bhagavad Gita 4:13, Krishna says, Chatur Varnyam Mayashristam Guna Karma Bhivagasaha. Chatur means four. Varnyam actually literally means like colors or choices, Srishtam to create. That Krishna created four big areas or fields of work. So those of you who are familiar with this, you probably know the Sanskrit names for these four fields. I'm going to ask that at least temporarily. I suggest for a week or so, if you really want to get deeply into this, you forget about the Sanskrit words. You can bring them in later. Because many of us have a lot of misconceptions or prejudices associated with those terms. So Rukmini and I came up with some English terms for these four fields. These aren't perfect words. I'm sure you could argue with us about them. We found that they're very serviceable. Now, Rukmini and I asked the question that why would the Supreme Lord take all the hundreds of thousands of possible jobs that people could have and divide them up into these four categories? What was the benefit of this? Why does this seem to be such an important part of a perfect socioeconomic system? Why not just say, and we do say this sometimes, that, whatever you're doing, just do that for the glory of God, do that for spiritual advancement, and not bother to have any categories. Well, one reason is that these four categories of work, except for the most simple human societies, are always present in human society, and people with the four corresponding temperaments are also always present in human society. So specific careers come and go, like there were no software engineers 200 years ago. There aren't a lot of blacksmithing jobs right now, but these four fields are very stable. Each field is very broad, and so even if you stay within a field, you can move to different jobs within that field. But the main reason, and I think this is one of the most important things to grasp, but perhaps a little difficult to grasp, is that the essential dharma or values or principles of these four fields are different and they're mutually exclusive, which is why no one can have a temperament in more than one field, because what's dharma in one field becomes a dharma in the other field. I mean, it's not, the principle of this thing is not so difficult to understand in the sense that all of us have some caution and some risk taking, but some people are much higher risk takers and some people are much higher in caution. So you want a more cautious person to be managing the temple accounting, but you want a more risk-taking person to preach Krishna consciousness in, say, a communist country. And you couldn't switch those. It wouldn't work. The risk-taking person would mismanage the accounts, and the cautious person wouldn't really be able to do the spreading of spirituality in a communist country, because their nature has to match their work. And the dharma of these two different kinds of work is incompatible. So there's some idea that this dharma is incompatible. And each of us has a temperament for one of these fields. So we're going to look briefly, again, I do teach this in depth. I teach a 2-hour course just on understanding the definition of each of these fields, and another 2-hour course on understanding the temperament of the fields. Whereas I'm going to go through like about 5 minutes for each of these. Okay, so let's look at the nature of the field of artistry. What is the nature of the field of artistry? So this particular field provides all of the beauty of society and all of the functioning of society. Without the people in this field, nothing will work and nothing will be beautiful. This field also provides all the pleasures of society. Metaphorically speaking, This field provides the salt and spices in the food of life. Without the work done in this field, we'd all be eating like plain unsalted rice, as one person I know calls it, solidified air. This is the most concrete of the four fields. It has clearly defined standards and clearly defined and objective standards of excellence, often equally clearly defined processes for achieving excellence. So, how do you make a good table? What is a good table? Is pretty much agreed upon in all societies and all cultures.
It's this.
Can you mute yourself? Of the world. All right, if we're going to look at the temperament of people who belong in this field, the temperament of people who belong in this field. So the Bhagavatam says that the people who should work in this field are satisfied people. These people are satisfied if they have a comfortable home and good food and nice clothes and loving people in their life, and that they can create a craft or service that serves others. The main demarcation of this field that does not exist in the other field is wanting to please customers and clients. The satisfaction of painting a picture that you never see again. It hangs in someone else's house, right? You cook food that someone else eats. You're adjusting someone else in their hospital bed. You're basically, your mood is that of service, and the Bhagavatam glorifies this attitude of service, which in all the four fields, again, it only exists in this field, and it is the area of this field that is very close to bhakti. Another part of this temperament is honesty. This is the honesty you take your car in to get repaired, and the mechanic tells you what's actually wrong with your car. They don't overcharge you. They don't say something's wrong that's not wrong with your car. So this field encompasses things like anyone who works in construction, the work in the fine arts, people like nurses, dentists, and surgeons, not other doctors, secretaries, professional athletes, anybody who's providing functionality and service. All engineering jobs are in this category. Now, we should mention that a lot of people like to do artistry type work for recreation because it is the field that deals with pleasure. So many times people who work in the other three fields, when they want to relax, they'll grow a garden or they'll cook fancy meals or they'll do some embroidery, but they wouldn't want to do that as a job in service to others. So we do want to make this distinction. Okay, now we're going to look at the field of ideas. The field of ideas provides the wisdom, guidance, truth, and education to society. So these are jobs in research and study. Can include teaching pretty much anything, any professional teacher, not like a trainer, not like someone who's giving driver ed classes a couple hours a day, but anybody who's teaching pretty much anything as their full profession, counseling, therapeutic jobs, people who are full-time clergy as their profession, medical doctors other than dentists and surgeon are also in this category. So these people are providing the wisdom and the guidance for society. Generally, they're going to be doing that through language or mathematics. Sometimes they may also involve the fine arts, like we could have an art therapist, for example, a photojournalist who's reporting on wars through photography. So sometimes this field involves communication through the fine arts rather than so much through language or mathematics. The temperament of people who are suited to work in the field of ideas. So, like the field of artistry, these are also satisfied people, but their satisfaction is different from artistry. These people are satisfied with mental and intellectual work. And unlike people in artistry, they usually have very low interest in creature comfort. So they're not so interested that I have to have a comfortable home and people who love me and good food to eat, and they're much more living in their heads. But they're also very satisfied. They're not ambitious people. These people also, like those in the field of artistry, are honest, but it's a different kind of honesty. Instead of being honest about what's wrong with your car, they're honest about what's wrong with the world, and they're honest about what's wrong with you on a deeper level. These people will speak straightforward truth. And the opposite, like the field of artistry, the main demarcating factor is wanting to please customers and clients. The temperament of the field of ideas is a dedication to truth. And in dedication to truth, people may not be pleased. And oh well, too bad. If they're pleased or not, I'm going to be dedicated to truth. So that is this. There's a lot of detachment in the field of ideas. In fact, the signature Dharma of this field is kind of an extreme detachment, which is necessary to understand and teach objective truth, even when it's not popular and even when it's not liked. Okay, now we're looking at the field of resources. The field of resources provides all of the resources, all of the raw materials. So all the raw materials for food, for clothing, all the fiber, for all the construction materials, wood, bricks, metal, all the raw materials for medicines. So this is the only field that's really generating what we normally think of as ordinary wealth. All the other fields are just moving it around or redistributing it or playing with it, but this is the only field that's generating it. So these are careers in agriculture, not just picking the apples, but if you're running the farm, you're managing the farm, distributing produce. So this refers to agricultural products from the land, also agricultural animals, cows, sheep for their wool, and so forth. Or it can involve just dealing with commerce and trade or banking, investment bankers, people who own and run banks, people who are in some kind of managerial sales position in business. Now, not the people who work at the, counter at the checkout. That would be an artistry person working in a business. But the people who are looking at the market and so forth. So these are the people who feed and clothe and house the world. This field also tends to have the most money, and so they tend to be the biggest employers. They tend to pay the most quantity of taxes and give the most quantity of charity. So the temperament of the people who should work in this field, these people need to be expansive. It says in the Bhagavatam, they're never satisfied. Srila Prabhupada's guru Bhaktisiddhanta said, they're always thirsty. They need to be expansive because they're not just making a garden to feed themselves, they have to feed the world. I remember talking to one young woman who was in this field, and she talked about how she liked to make investments so she could give herself what we call a cushion. She called it a pillow. In other words, something that you can fall back on in difficult times. And she said, I want to give this pillow to everyone. I'd like everyone in the world to have this kind of pillow. I'd like to make everybody wealthy. So this sort of real expansiveness. Also, the people in this field, we don't expect them to be honest in the ordinary sense, but rather to be diplomatic. So we don't expect all advertising to be completely honest. We don't expect when we go into a business for them to tell us how much they paid for the things they're selling. Unlike someone in artistry, who they repair our plumbing and they give us the receipts for the pipes. So what really motivates these people is sustainable, regenerative wealth. So the dharmic expertise of this field are people who are making sure that wealth is sustainable and regenerative, which is why they're profit-minded, because you have to save some seeds from this year's harvest to put back into the agriculture. You have to put profit back to keep things sustainable and regenerative. And these people are supposed to be stewards of the agricultural land and water, air, and animals. So then we have the field of government. So as soon as we have more than a very simple society, we need to have some sort of organization in society. We need to have laws. We need to have people who create the laws, who enforce the laws, who protect us from internal and external threats, who make sure that people get their due and what's due to them under the laws. These are people who are very interested in fairness and ethics and morality and justice. So the field of government does not just apply to political governments. It can also apply to organizations like the United Nations and NATO and Interpol, which do government type work. And in our modern day and age, it applies to some what we call NGOs, non-government organizations that work on charity and do the work of government. It also can apply to a landlord who has maybe an apartment building that is like a little kingdom where they're providing parking, they're providing water, electricity, and safety, and so forth. So the temperament of people who should work in the field of government is that they should feel like big parents of the society. Like resources, they're expansive, but they're expansive in a different way. They're expansive that they want to bring care and justice, honorable justice, to as many people as possible. They want to provide a society of dignity and ethics and morality and care to as broad of a number of people as possible. Not just like somebody who wants to protect their own family, but actually wants to protect society in general. So they're the real carers of society, but on a broad scale. And like people in resources, they are also diplomatic rather than just straightforward in honesty. In fact, one of the careers in this field is to be a diplomat. So the careers in this field are like all the elected politicians, the lawyers, the judges, the social workers, police officers, firefighters. The key Dharma here that you do not find in the other four fields is running into danger. Arjuna had a child named Abhimanyu. Abhi means toward, Manyu means danger. So this is the only field where people actively run into danger and they are energized by danger. So people in the other fields may be able to be focused and calm in danger, but afterwards they're exhausted and depleted, whereas people in this field, they live for that. That's their real energy. And they will give their life for protecting others and for justice. So we've looked at these four fields and we've seen what is the speciality of each of these fields. In artistry, it's pleasing customers and clients, wanting to have a high quality of goods or services. Someone who has dharmic expertise in artistry, they will be willing to sacrifice to produce high quality of goods or services. Like I saw a sign in a restaurant, we make slow food. If you want fast food, go down the street. Right? Those in resources, they're going to sacrifice in order to, if they have dharmic expertise, to keep prosperity sustainable and regenerative. They don't want to just go in and make a quick dollar by exploiting nature. They want to do things that are going to be protective of nature. Those who have dharmic expertise in government, they're willing to sacrifice for justice and honor and dignity. And those in ideas are willing to sacrifice for objective truth. And again, these things are in opposition to one another. In artistry, this mood of serving customers and clients. In government, this mood of justice and running into danger. In ideas, this extreme detachment. And in resources, this extreme thirst. And so because each of these demarcating factors are in opposition to one another, therefore Krishna tells us twice in the Bhagavad Gita, don't do someone else's work. Shreyan swadharma viguna paradhamatsanustitat. He says twice in the Bhagavad Gita. And you'll notice this word bhayavaha. Bhaya means fear. Avaha means a vehicle. Krishna says, don't go into someone else's path. Don't do someone else's work. Don't pretend to be something that you're not, which is, of course, exhausting. He says, if you do, your work will become a vehicle of fear. It will become a vehicle of fear for you and for everyone else. What will happen is that we will try to bring our own Dharma, because our Dharma can't be repressed. We'll bring that into our work and mess it up. On a personal level, when I do my own work, swa means my own, para means someone else's. When I do my own work, I'm going to be energized. I'm going to be enlivened. I'm going to easily be in a state of flow. When I do someone else's work, I'm going to feel depleted. I'm just going to be living for breaks and vacations. When I'm doing my own work, my mind will be my friend, a very important tenet in yoga understanding, any kind of yoga. If I do other people's work, I'm going to be always fighting against my mind because my internal compass is not going to align with the work that I'm doing. When I'm doing my work itself is so satisfying that it's very easy for me to be detached from the results and to offer those results in spiritual service. If I'm doing other people's work, I'm not getting satisfaction from the work itself, and therefore I'm going to be very attached to the results. Okay, our principle 2 is that we advance through life while nourishing our nature. It's a point Srila Prabhupada makes in the 4th canto, that we have to take our Dharma and we have to become expert at it. That we have a certain inclination, but that inclination has to be trained. So the scripture generally describes the work in the 4 fields from the platform of someone who has dharmic expertise in those fields. But even this Mr. Usain Bolt, which is a great name, he started out just learning how to walk. So what we look for to see what field we're in is not, do we already have all the dharmic expertise, but do we have the inclination for that field? And it's very important that Krishna says that our nature cannot be repressed. He also brings this point up later. In the 18th chapter, he said, Arjuna, you're going to be a prince, you're going to be a soldier, you're going to be a ruler, and if you don't do it spiritually, you're going to do it selfishly. But that's what you're going to do. You're not going to be able to be something else. Now, because our nature can't be repressed, it will show up somehow when we're young. The research shows that by the time we're 13, our values and our dharma can be identified. For many people, far less than that. And so what should happen, ideally in a society, is that our parents and our teachers should be able to recognize our intrinsic dharma, which of these 4 fields we have the temperament for, which of these prosperity types will nourish us in our work, and train us in the dharma. Now, today, in career training, people are trained in knowledge of the work and skills of the work, but they're not trained in the dharma of the work. If they're trained in ethics, they're trained in ethics as if the same kind of ethics applied to everyone. But ideally, and of course, Srila Prabhupada wanted us to have Varnashram colleges in every center. Ideally, we'd be training people in the dharma of their work. Now, also, this principle deals with the fact that there are 4 stages of life. So ideally, when we're young, our dharma is recognized and trained. When we're in the prime of life, we work according to our dharma. When we hit midlife, we can retire and advise others. And at the very end of life, we don't have anything to do with any of this, and we prepare for our final journey. Now, many times people think, well, this is all I need to do. I just need to find out what is my nature, connect that to my work, boom, done. But there are other principles of career dharma. If we want to really find satisfaction and purpose in our work, and there's so much research that real happiness comes from purpose and meaning. So our first principle here, principle 3, is that we need to extend our prosperity to others. So the simple word for this principle is charity. So in Vedic times, there's no concept that an unmarried person just works, keeps all the money for themselves, and just buys stuff for themselves. At least you share your money with a spouse, you share your money with kids, you share your money with your parents, you share your wealth with the creatures who live around your house. In some way, you share and you give. And there's a lot of evidence in the scriptures that how much money we have in this life is directly related to how charitable we were in our previous lifetimes. There's empirical evidence that we can increase our money, wealth, if we're more charitable even in this life. The people who are more charitable in this life will make more money even in this life. But in addition to sharing our wealth in terms of money, we can also share our wealth in terms of prosperity types. Whatever type of prosperity I'm enjoying, I can share with others primarily through volunteer work. So I can volunteer my time. Time is just as valuable of a resource as money. In fact, for most of us, money is simply a way of valuing our time. Somebody paid us for our time. So one can give one's time specifically in the ways that one is personally enriched. So this is a very, very important principle of career Dharma, that one should be a giver, not a taker. The next principle is that our work should be ethical and meaningful work of value. Our work should be honest. It should be honest. So we should be charging a fair price, giving a proper description of whatever goods or services we are providing. If we have people who we employ or we pay, we should pay them an honest wage, treat them with dignity and respect. Now, just having honesty in that regard is not enough. We also want to do work that meets people's real needs. There's a lot of people today that do work that nobody really needs, producing items or services that don't add any quality to anyone's life. So we want to do work that's meeting people's real needs. And we certainly don't want to do work that's harmful. Of course, we may not be able to 100% eliminate harm from our work. Krishna says that every work has some fault, like smoke covers fire. But in general, we should not do harmful work, such as being in the tobacco industry. But above just ordinary honesty and value, we have a chapter in our book called Esoteric Work of Value, how we can get out of what Rukmini and I call the cycle of frustration. If we just stay in materialistic consciousness, we do our dharma, we get our prosperity, we enjoy our senses. After a while, we'll be like, is that all there is to life? And then we'll want liberation. But because we're going to work anyway according to our nature, we're going to go right back to dharma and keep going in this cycle. We can get out of the cycle of frustration by having prema, or love. If we work with love for what we do, love for who we serve, love for ourselves, and ultimately love for Krishna, then we will be able to add real spiritual value in our work, regardless of what kind of work it is. Now, you might be surprised that in order to do work that's ethical, we also have to do work according to our dharma. So remember this verse we looked at from the third chapter, Sran Swadharma Viguna Paradamastanustitat. The first two lines of this verse are the same in Bhagavad Gita 1847, where Krishna says, hey, do the work that corresponds to your field. Now here we're looking at the fact that it's not just a personal effect. Do I feel enlivened? Do I feel depleted? Is my mind my friend? Is my mind my enemy? Am I detached from the results? Am I attached to the results? But what kind of effect do I have on society? Now, again, this is a topic that I teach for 2 hours just on this one topic. We have 2 chapters on this in the book. So this is a real, just quick run through. Let's look at government and resources. If somebody with a mentality of government works in resources, or someone with a mentality of resources works in government. So if someone with a temperament of government works in resources, they're not going to have this mood of sustainable regenerative wealth. They're going to have a mood of justice. When the government in the former Soviet Union took over the farms, there was famine. People were starving. Government temperament people running businesses tend to run them into the ground. They don't have the sense of being profitable. The Bhagavatam says that they're very, very generous. Their idea of a fair price will be based on social justice. What about when people with the mentality of resources go into government type work where they're going to try to make a profit out of government? We can think about privately run prisons in the United States, where they're not very interested in reforming and educating the prisoners. They want repeat customers. All right, if we're looking at government and ideas, people with a temperament of government doing ideas work, people with a temperament of ideas doing government work. So people with the temperament of ideas doing government work, they're too detached. In government work, you have to be a little patriotic. Our country, our team, yay, work for our team, pay your taxes, serve in the military. And ideas people, they're too detached. They're going to be, what's this? My country, my team business. Right? People and ideas are going to be too merciful. They're going to be too soft on crime. They're going to take too long to research. Uh, People with a government mentality working in ideas, they're going to have difficulty with the abstractions of ideas. They'll tend to politicize knowledge, like history books written by a government. They're not really trustworthy. And then they damage people's trust in the field of ideas, which is very significant because the field of ideas has to guide the rest of society. Government-minded people might impose more of a hierarchical structure on ideas and impede the free flow of knowledge in society. Crossing ideas and resources. People with the mentality of resources working in ideas, people with the mentality of ideas working in resources. I find this one of the most interesting crossings. People with an ideas temperament, if they're working in resources, they're going to feel it's unethical to make money and make a profit, which is their job for society. But they're going to think this is unethical. I have a friend with an ideas temperament who started a business, and she said, I hate making money. I just want to give everything away. Also, you've got the satisfied nature of ideas, and they may want to grow their own garden, but they don't want to feed the world. They're going to really have a hard time with that. People with the mentality of resources working in ideas, they're going to think it's unethical to do theoretical research. They're going to say, why are we wasting time and people's time and money on researching things that aren't immediately financially practical? If they do ideas work, they're going to tend to profitize it. You think about pharmaceutical research done by pharmaceutical companies. Crossing government and artistry. People with a mentality of government working in artistry, people with a mentality of artistry working in government. When people with a mentality of artistry working in government, artistry are the people who maintain the status quo in the society. They're the foundation people. Uh, and they really like that, they're satisfied with like comforts in life. But in government, you got to be energized by danger. We had an instance a few years ago in America. There was a shooting in a school, and the police officers didn't go in and save the kids. And they asked them why. And they're like, well, somebody was shooting in there. So that's what happens when artistry people go into government. Also, because artistry people are more satisfied, government work is more expensive. Artistry people may say, hey, what's all this politics? Why do I have to do in such an expansive way? Or they may impose bureaucracy on government because it's more of a concrete than an abstract field. When people with the mentality of government go into artistry, they're too much risk taking. I mean, you really don't want someone energized by danger doing your electrical wiring. And because in artistry they have to please customers and clients, they may become insubordinate, or they may become vigilantes or agitators in some way because they're really restrained with being able to fight for justice. I'm convinced that a lot of the people today who go online, rabble rousing about justice and fairness are people who have a government temperament, but are working probably in artistry jobs. Crossing ideas and artistry. Crossing ideas and artistry. When somebody with an ideas temperament works in artistry, they really don't want to please customers and clients. They want to be detached and work for objective truth. So, like government temperament people in artistry, they may be insubordinate, they may be late, they may miss deadlines. They also may dry up the field of artistry. They may be so detached that they're not into providing pleasures for society, and they may dry up the field. I know of one man who has this problem. Or they may get pulled into the nature of the pleasure of that field, and they may use their intellectual scholarly capacity for harm. If we think about like mad scientists, someone with the mentality of artistry who works in the field of ideas they're very concrete. people. They're going to have a very difficult time with all the abstractions of the field of ideas. They may sensualize knowledge. Again, like whether the government people politicize it, the resource people profitize it, and the artistry people sensualize it. In all cases, the objectivity of the field of ideas is damaged, and then people don't trust what's in the field of ideas. Crossing resources and artistry, mentality, someone with a mentality of artistry working in resources, or somebody with a mentality of resources working in artistry. Somebody with an artistry mentality working in resources, because they're not expansive people and they don't have the sustainable regenerative mood, they may end up with businesses or agriculture that are polluting the environment and just working for something for immediate comfort, or they may not really be able to expand. They're happy to have a little bakery and sell their bread, but they don't want to feed the world. People with the resource mentality working in artistry, they destroy the craft. They want to expand it. Let's make more pots faster for more money, and then it's all done in a factory instead of people actually producing things of beauty and craft. So again, that's just a little idea in the book. We have many, many historical examples. So going beyond to progressing to dharmic mastery. So here we have 3 personal principles. We're going to look at delight in cherishing our prosperity and field of work. This is an extremely significant principle. Once we understand career dharma, we'll see how many of the world's problems are from people working in the wrong field or from people working in the right field but not cherishing the dharma of that field. So our prosperity all comes from Mother Nature. None of us can create our prosperity. It all comes from Mother Earth. It comes from the divine. It comes from the Lord. And so it's something that we should cherish, we should value, we should take care of. If we don't take care of our sources of prosperity, it's like cutting off the head of the goose who laid the golden egg, or cutting off the tree branch that gives us fruit. So our first source of prosperity is our own body and mind. We don't want to have jobs that make us sick or that cause us undue mental, emotional stress. And I know of people who have jobs like this, by the time they're 30, they're burned out. We also want to take care of the people we work with, who are also our sources of prosperity. We don't want to work them out, burn them out physically. We don't want to burn them out mentally or emotionally. Our work should also respect the environment, which is the source of our prosperity. Then we have in a chapter about cherishing our wealth, we have ways that we can especially cherish each of our types of prosperity. So let's just look at this simply. Let's say I'm enjoying beauty. So let's say I'm enjoying beauty, I'm enjoying Shri. So I don't want to cover poor quality with something that just looks nice. Right? That would be a way of not cherishing Shri. So to cherish Shri, I want to make sure that things not only look nice, but they're actually of high quality. If I'm cherishing Vairagya, I want to make sure that I'm not so detached that I don't care about people. If I'm cherishing Aishvarya, I don't just want to be the big boss. I want to make other people feel smart and empowered. There's a lot in the scriptures about cherishing the particular field that we're in. And we have a whole chapter in the book on this topic. This is very, very important, though I'm just going to spend a couple minutes on it right now. So each of these fields has their own dharma that needs to be protected. Basically, when I'm cherishing my prosperity and field of work, I'm enjoying things as the Lord's grace, as the Lord's prasadam, rather than trying to enjoy them on my own. So the main thing that I'm doing in artistry is that I'm protecting the quality of my craft and service. I'm protecting the quality of my craft and service. The main thing I'm protecting in government, I'm protecting equality of justice. I'm keeping the principle of serving people uppermost. I don't have special interests. I'm not using government for personal gain. In resources, I'm making sure that I'm protecting especially the agricultural land and animals and resources. I'm treating everyone with fairness and respect. Prabhupada says not working on the black market. In ideas, I'm making sure that truth is objective and applied beneficially. I don't allow myself to be manipulated or controlled by others for financial gain. Again, this is just a brief summary, but it's extremely important that people are trained in their own Dharma and how to protect, as one person in one training I gave put it, this is the ripple effect. You throw a rock in the water, how does it affect others? That what I do in my own work affects the integrity of that whole field for all of society. This next one, I think most of you are very familiar with, having celebrations of the sacred in our life and work. In Bhagavad Gita 3:16, Krishna says, Evam Pavaditam Chakram. And Srila Prabhupada talking about this says, chakra means a wheel that's moving. So in nature, plants and animals, they take from nature and they give back to nature. But we have to do this intentionally. Prabhupada would say we should pay our electric bill to the sun. So this principle means that we take time off of work, we take time off of our regular life, and we spend some time connecting with the divine. Whatever our tradition is, whatever our particular rituals will be, that we take some discrete time, we take some special time. I'm going to connect with the divine. I'm going to have some time when I pay my electric bill to the sun. Now, ultimately, this mood of yajna and spiritual practice should pervade our life, as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 4:24, so that everything that we do becomes this divine connection. But in order to do this, we have to have some discrete time. And our last individual principle is working above the shades of ego, what Rukmini and I call the shades of ego. So tamas is like a dark curtain over a window. You can't see out at all. Rajas is kind of like a sheer curtain over a window, or the kind of the windows you'll see in bathrooms where, you can see some shapes and some light, but you can't see clearly. Sattva is like a clear, clean window, and above the shades are like being outside. So let's imagine that life is a river. So in tamas, we're polluting and fouling the river of life. So introduce you to Mr. Thomas. Hi, I'm Mr. Thomas. I want to do things that are easy. Yeah, I'll do the right thing if it's easy, easy, cheap, whatever. Like I'll eat a plant-based burger if they sell it at McDonald's for the same price. But, I'm not going to go to another place and pay a lot of money for something like if the remote control's over there, I'm just going to watch whatever's next on the television. Like I'm not an ambitious person. I'm not a woo spiritual person. I take care of my family and don't insult them or I'll insult you back. If life is a river, Rajas pushes and forces the river of life. I am Rajas. I work hard for what I have. I am a builder of society. I have built the hospitals, the schools, the roads. I am a great benefactor of society. I am not lazy and I'm not some woo spiritual person. And someday, my name will be in the history books and my statue will be in the park. Then we have sattva. If life is a river, sattva plunges into the river of life and floats and flows in the river of life. When we talk about going with the flow, that is very much sattva. So I am sattva. I am a very spiritual person. I live in harmony. I am forgiving. I am equipoise because it makes me feel so good inside. I am not ambitious and I am not lazy. I see everyone equally, unlike those materialistic people. I have a shelf full of crystals and angels. But we want to be above the shades of ego. If life is a river, we want to play and frolic in the river of life. Prabhupada said being a part of Krishna means that we're Krishna's partner, that we see life as an adventure that's full of play and that's full of joy. And you never know quite how an adventure is going to turn out, but we're working with the divine in order to fulfill his mission in the world. The sage of ego are like the dark side of our work. And many people think, oh, I've got to pull energy from these shades in order to do my work. But we don't need to. And they actually trip us up. Let's look at some examples. In charity, giving charity in tamas means we give the wrong thing to the wrong person. We give alcohol to the alcoholic, or we give the right thing to the right person, but without respect. Here, take your charity and get out of my face. Or at the wrong time, we give them charity when they're on the toilet. In Rajas, we give the right thing to the right person, the right place with respect, but we're calculating. If I give you this, what am I going to get? Maybe my boss will be pleased with me. I'll get a promotion. In Sattva, we give the right thing to the right person at the right time with respect because it makes us feel so happy and balanced inside. And above the shades, we give the right thing to the right person, the right place, the right time with respect in order to please Krishna. Lurking in the workplace and working in tamas, we're stubborn, deceitful, insulting, lazy, morose, procrastinating. In rajas, attached, greedy, envious, impure. Things go badly, things go well. Whoa. In sattva, without attachment, without identification, whether success or failure. Above the shades in work, this is from Bhagavad Gita 3:30. 3 things to do and 3 things not to do. So 3 things not to do. Not to try to enjoy our prosperities without cherishing them. Not to think that I'm an owner. I don't own my body, my mind, my talents, my work, my money. And not to be feverish, which can be either lazy because you're feverish or running around feverishly without purpose. 3 things to do. Dedicate all my work every minute to our ultimate source, to the divine, to Krishna. Always be aware that I am not this body, I am not this mind, I am a spiritual being, and interestingly enough, do the work that corresponds to my nature. So those are the 7 personal principles. We're going to look briefly at the whole system for peace and prosperity. Srila Prabhupada used this term peace and prosperity 195 times. And he talked about it, of course, in different ways many, many more times. So we have a whole section of the book on this topic. Maintaining societal balance, cooperation between the fields, and competition only within the fields. So the fields need to cooperate with each other. Ideas, trains, and guides. Government approves licensing and accreditation. May also provide venues or facilitators to help launch, repair, or maintain cooperative endeavors. Resources organizes, directs, and distributes the flow of money, materials, energy, and other resources. And artistry has joint endeavors. Now, it would be nice if everybody worked in their field and cherished their field, but there also needs to be checks and balances between the field. So ideas holds government to the rule of law. We can think of the role of a free press. Government has checks and balances through creating and enforcing laws. Resources, checks and balances through how and where they spend their money. Artistry in numbers, because it's the largest number of people are in artistry, but also, interestingly enough, what people in artistry choose to translate into art, music, and entertainment. We had a couple of interesting court cases like that in this country. A few years ago, the government passes a law, but people working in artistry are like, well, I'm not going to put that on my website. I'm not going to put that on my cakes. So what do the people in the media choose to put in the movies and television? What do they choose to put in music? It can bring out what's done by the other fields or not. Then there should be competition, but only within the fields. So the 4 fields should not compete with each other. All the competition should be within the fields. Srila Prabhupada says competition gives life. Now, maybe in theory, we should always want to do our best for its own sake, but in practice, when we have an opponent, it encourages us, it focuses our mind, it invigorates our effort, reminds us of our own potential, pushes us to explore the limits of our abilities. It should be friendly competition, like a jewelry or a fashion district that benefits businesses and individuals, not predatory competition. We're not trying to erase our competitors. Competition in artistry brings masterpieces and inventions. Competition in resources increases the quality and the distribution of resources. Think about in government. In America, we have different types of government in different states. In India, the same is true. And of course, different countries have different kinds of government, and these different kinds of government compete as to who is going to serve people the best. Competition in ideas leads to being responsive to changing time, place, and circumstances, and to purity and efficacy in medicine, in science, in research, and in religion. And our final principle, I think one that when people think of these topics among Hare Krishna devotees, this is the only one they tend to think of, is all-inclusive sustainable prosperity. So some time ago, economists made a deliberate decision to separate concepts of economic prosperity from natural resources. They started defining economic prosperity as economic growth. Well, the problem with that is if you try to have infinite growth in a finite system, it's not going to work. In fact, that's the definition of cancer: cells that try for infinite growth in a finite system. With such a concept of economic prosperity, we end up forcing the land to try to produce with artificial fertilizers and pesticides, forcing animals to produce with hormones and antibiotics, forcing distribution so everyone can eat strawberries 12 months a year. That's the kind of thing Hiranyakashipu did, tried to force the trees to produce all year, and forcing people to work too many hours, too many things, forcing them in the wrong field. Also, this concept leads to a huge wealth disparity, where some people have billions of dollars and some people can't afford one meal a day. Instead, we need a socioeconomic position that provides all-inclusive, sustainable prosperity. And at the end of our book, we provide chapters that go into this in depth. So we looked at identifying our ideal career field and prosperity type, learning the secrets of making our work deeply meaningful, progressing towards dharmic mastery, and the whole system for peace and prosperity. In terms of connecting our nature with our livelihood, advancing through life while nourishing our nature, extending our prosperity to others, ethical and meaningful work of value, delight in cherishing our prosperity and field of work, having celebrations of the sacred in our life and work, being above the shades of ego, maintaining societal balance, cooperation between the fields, and competition within the fields, and all-inclusive sustainable prosperity. Again, if you'd like more information, please go to careerdharma.net. We have a full course there. We have lists of coaches in various parts of the world. You can sign up on our mailing list and so forth.
Your Grace, Urmila Devi Dasi ki jai. Hare Krishna. That was fantastic. There's so many comments here that they could listen to that over and over again. Lots of requests for the recording. And I'm so happy that we did our Fathom on that because there's just so many amazing concepts. I'm personally just so in admiration of your deep philosophical and intellectual abilities, Urmila Devi. So thank you so much for your nature. I'm not sure how you would describe yourself in these contexts of positional, right down here, or in the natures. But yeah, any questions for Urmila Devi Dasi? I would love to hear what other people are thinking. Let's see. Prabhupada Priya there's a lot of different comments here.
I just looked through the comments. Doesn't seem anything that I particularly need to answer, but if anybody wants to raise their hand or write a question in the chat.
So, can I just ask a quick question while other maybe people are formulating?
Sure.
Um, so I'm wondering about the connection of. So did you connect this in with Varnashram Dharma when you were looking at it's more of like a easily digestible?
Well, that's what it is.
It is okay,
That's what
beautiful,
it is.
very nice.
Yes, it's focusing on the Varna part. Prabhupada said first Varna, then ashram. So the main focus is on the Varna part. The principle two, advancing through life while nourishing our nature, is related to ashram. But although we brought ashram dharma into it, our primary focus is on Varna dharma.
Beautiful. And oh, Prabhupada Priya, ask raise your hand.
All right, Krishna. I have a question. I was going through the prosperity types. I was doing this a
Yes.
while ago when I was doing the online course, and I was thinking that for myself, Yasha was one thing that I feel like I really need to make me happy in my life. And then I was talking to my older daughter, and she was like, "Yeah, but like fame and being appreciated by people, isn't that like not what devotees are supposed to want? Like amanina, manadena, kirtanya sadhari, isn't that actually like an obstruction to your bhakti?" And like in the Manashiksha also it says that this desire to be honored by others is, like compared to the urine of the donkey or something like that. So, what are
Well,
your thoughts?
any prosperity type can be enjoyed exploitively or in service. That's what we talk about cherishing our prosperity type. So seeing what I need to be happy and what I need to be nourished. It's very much like in Ayurveda. There's different types of food, sorry, that nourish different types of people. If you have really high vata, you probably shouldn't eat a lot of potatoes. But if you have really high kapha, it's really good to eat a lot of potatoes. And so knowing what's good for you individually is also very important if I'm going to be of service to the whole system. Prabhupada says we're a cell in the universal body of God. If I'm going to be of service to the mission, I'm going to be of service to the Lord, I need to know what nourishes me. Like when Prabhupada talks about Gajendra, and he says that we have to be in our element. We have to be in our right place. So it's part of that. But if I'm thinking, well, I'm going to enjoy yasha, or even I'm going to enjoy vairagya. Our acharyas say that the main reason that Krishna gave Sudama Vipra so much wealth is that he was attached to vairagya. And that the reason that the Lord told Narada Muni, hey, I'm only going to show up one time, you're not going to see me again, is that Narada was attached to vairagya. He was attached to living in forests. So anything that we're attached to for our own sense gratification is going to be a problem. The kind of fame that we're supposed to give up is people are honoring me because I'm religious, because I'm a devotee. It's an exploitive mentality where I'm using my devotion to the Lord for people to honor me. But what we're talking here about yasha is being in an emotionally supportive environment, which is part of the spiritual world. It's so nicely explained in the Bhagavatam that everyone in Vaikuntha appreciates everyone else's service. So wanting to be in a spiritual atmosphere is not a material desire. It's like if you say, well, I want to associate with devotees or something. I want to have a conducive devotee association. And again, all of these things could be material or spiritual, depends on how you understand them, whether or not that's why the point of cherishing is so important. And if we look at these in terms of uh, only certain ways of enjoying our spiritual, we're not going to actually have an individualistic philosophy. It's like saying we should only eat bitter melon, nobody should eat sweet rice because sweet rice is more sense gratificatory than bitter melon or something like that. But that's not our philosophy. And how I am particularly nourished is something very important for me to understand. The other thing, the other reason it's very important is Krishna tells Arjuna, you're going to do your nature anyway. Your choice is not, can you not do your nature? Your choice is, can you do your nature spiritually or materially? That's the choice. And so if I have a nature to that I'm energized by Aishvarya and I don't take some positional leadership for Krishna, then I'm going to take some political leadership, some positional rather, some positional leadership for my own ego. I'm not just going to be able to say, well, I'm not going to take any positional leadership if Aishwarya is at the top of my list. That's not going to work. I'm going to do it anyway. If I'm very attached to beauty, if I really need beauty in my life and my work, if I don't do beautiful things for Krishna, I'm going to do beautiful things just for my senses. Is that all right?
Yeah, I'm thinking that it's really important for, if you're living in a society, it's important for others to also know what everybody's prosperity types are so that they can, make sure that everybody is getting what they need and inspired.
Well,
For
especially,
example, when I was teaching at the Sri Mayapur International School, it's like I had a small stipend, but it was literally peanuts, it was some small amount of rupees per month. But because I was appreciated so much by, the
mm,
teachers and the parents and the students and the whole community, it was like, that was fine. They could have not paid me. In fact, I said, you guys really, you don't even need to pay me what this amount is that you're giving me. It's like, just like, forget it. Don't worry about it. But I was like doing overtime and like, putting in so much effort to serve the best of my ability because I was getting the yasha, I was like getting a lot of appreciation.
yes,
So
definitely,
if we
especially
know
people
that
who
about
are,
each
yeah,
other, then we
absolutely.
know how to inspire people and keep them going in their services.
Absolutely. And especially anyone who's in some kind of managerial situation.
Mm.
I'm going to answer this question by Balakrishna Das. A questionnaire, so it's something that Rukmini and I talked about a lot. Could you do a questionnaire? And I think our conclusion was that that's never going to happen. There are several reasons for that. One is that we can deceive ourselves. We can put down the answers that we think we should put down. Oh, I don't care about fame. Or I don't care about beauty or something like that. We run into this all the time. So we put down answers that we think we're supposed to. We think, are the right answers to put down. We may misjudge ourselves because of the way that we were raised or the way that we were trained. And we do coaches training all over the world. And one of the things the coaches find in their training over and over and over again is that how many people are out of touch with themselves. And by proper coaching, we're able to get the people to do self-realization and self-discovery. But I don't think it's ever going to be something that can be automated or scored by a machine. We do have Appendix B in the book for self-evaluation, and I am working, please give me your blessings, on a simplified workbook to go along with the book with a lot of introspective questions. Yes, Sadhvi.
Hare Krishna, thank you very much for today. Um, I am in very high old age now, and I have adult children. And all my life, whatever I have worked with, I have never been unhappy. I have done it without even thinking, is that good for me? Is that this is what I like or not like? And I didn't think about how much I can get. And I have worked in many, many different places. Does that mean that I have all that nature? For instance, I have worked as a translator. I have worked in the school for the children. I have been even cleaning offices and so on. I have worked as a counselor. So what does that mean? I cooked for my children's friend. They love my cooking. So what does that mean? Does
Well,
this mean
it would be very difficult for me right here and right now to go into this in depth, but I'm sure if we did a coaching session with you, that you would see which of these was actually your nature.
okay? Because you say when you do something, if you're not happy, then it means it's not in your nature. Does
Well,
this
no, it works the other way. If you're working according to your nature, your work will not be enlivening. The work itself will not be enlivening for you. Now, what many of us do if we work outside of our nature is we will try to shift the work to reflect who we really are. We'll change the nature of the work if we can. For example, like I know someone who has the nature of artistry and they're running a gift shop. And the gift shop doesn't make much money. They're running a temple gift shop. Their gift shop doesn't make much money, but it's a beautiful gift shop. It looks like a museum. So they've shifted the work to make it reflect artistry. Or I know a person who has an ideas temperament and he runs a whole agricultural area again at a devotee project. But the agricultural area doesn't produce much food for the community. And it certainly doesn't make a profit. It's actually a financial loss for the temple, but he runs it as a botanical laboratory. Now, he's really happy working there in the garden as a botanical laboratory, but he's not actually working the garden as an agriculturalist. So what we tend to do is if we find a way to be happy doing work that's not our nature, is we'll shift the work. We'll morph the nature of the work if we can. If we can't do that, then we're not going to be happy. So I'd have to spend more time with you and go through what you're doing and how you did that and what did that mean in order to really answer that question on an individual level. Yeah, so Balakrishna Prabhu, that's true. And therefore, we are training coaches. Prabhupada wanted to run ashram college in every center. So ideally, in every center, we would have people who are actually coaches and can help people understand their nature. Many people can understand their nature just by listening to this presentation or just by reading the book. I mean, I've had that happen all the time. People don't all have to have individual help. On careerdharma.net, we list people who are certified coaches in various parts of the world.
Fantastic. Urmila Devi Dasi, I'm completely inspired. And I agree with Prabhupada Priya that you're an ideas person, probably among many other things. I mean, to bring this all to life, you've got to have all these other qualities. It's incredible. So careerdharma.net, is that the best way to guide people to connect with you, to become coach or to get coaching?
That's the best place for they can find the names of coaches and also where they can find more information. If they write to the person there, they can also get in touch with me personally, but we have many trained coaches in many parts of the world. It doesn't have to be me personally.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much for your generous time and incredible presentation and
Thank you
incredible
for inviting
knowledge.
me.
Really appreciate it. And yes, I hope we have you back more often. Urmila Devi Dasi, this is a, a, a
Well, now that I know that you're in Maui, because I've got two adult grandchildren, will be three pretty soon, living on the Big Island. And like last time I was there, my flight had a layover in Maui, and I did visit some devotees there for a few hours, but I didn't know that you were also there. So
we're the
it was
smallest ISKCON center on the planet, likely, and we love association. We love serving devotees that come and stay here. We like to feed them and give them lots of adventures. So please come.
I'll keep that in mind if Krishna brings me back to Hawaii.
Okay, beautiful. Okay, thank you everyone for being a part of this Sangha. Thank you so much. Urmila Devi Dasi ki jai. Vanchakalpa tribhyascha kripa sindhubhyeva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.